Hello, listeners. It's Gunter Swoboda here with some exciting news. We're on the lookout for sponsors to join us on our incredible journey with Inspired Change with Gunter. If your organisation cares deeply about meaningful conversations around masculinity, self development, and mental health, we'd love to partner with you. Our podcast has a wonderful, dedicated audience committed to personal growth and positive social change. By sponsoring Inspired Change with Gunter, your brand will connect with listeners who truly value thoughtful discussion and support initiatives that promote real transformation. We're incredibly proud to be ranked #1 in Australia and #5 in the USA on FeedSpot's top men's mental health podcasts. For more information on how to become a sponsor, please reach out to Miranda Spiegner Sapon, our showrunner and executive producer. We'd love to explore how we can work together to inspire change. Now, thank you for your continued support, and let's keep inspiring change together.
You're listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. To guide us through the intricacies and intersections of emotions, relationships, and male identity is renowned psychologist, author, and speaker Gunter Swoboda. This is Inspire Change.
Before I begin the actual podcast, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I work. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. Welcome everybody to another episode of Inspired Change with Gunter. I'm your host. Welcome everybody to another episode of Inspired Change with Gunter, and I'm your host, Gunter Swoboda. I'm a psychologist, author, and I'm the founder of Making Good Men Great, a framework for men's growth and recovery from patriarchy. So today I want to share with you my reflections on a book that has deeply resonated with me. Now, I read it a while ago, and because of my research at the moment, I'm revisiting quite a lot of literature that I've been reading, and it's one of them. And I believe that if you will read this book, it will resonate with you as well. The book's called The Myth of Normal: Trauma, Illness, and Healing in a Toxic Culture. And it's written by a man that I deeply respect, Dr. Gabor Mate. He, amongst others, is one of those people that I hold in high esteem because of intellectual depth that he brings to the table. What makes this book powerful and provocative is that it invites us to question the very society we live in, exactly the same way that I do, and to challenge what we've been told is normal, and to ask, what if normal is actually making us sick? So over the next 20 minutes, I'll walk you through 3 big ideas from the book, how they connect with my own work redefining masculinity and patriarchy, and what we can all take away as we strive to heal, both personally and collectively. Now remember, I've stipulated that personal is political. This fits into this framework. So let's take a dive into the myth of normal. Mate's central thesis is, in fact, deceptively simple. That is, what we call normal in our culture, the way we live, work, and relate to each other, is profoundly abnormal if our aim is health and wholeness. We live in a society that prizes productivity over presence, competition over connection, and suppression over expression. As Mate writes, in a culture that is fundamentally disconnected, it is the well-adjusted who are actually maladjusted. because they've adapted to dysfunction. He points to rising rates of chronic illness, mental health disorders, addiction, loneliness, not as personal failures, but as inevitable symptoms of a toxic environment. In his words, illness is not a random misfortune. It is the organism's way of saying no to what no longer serves it. Now, this is a deeply healing reframing. It's also confronting. It asks us to stop seeing suffering as a personal weakness and start seeing it as a signal. Something about the way we're living needs to change. When I think about this through the lens of masculinity, I see parallels everywhere. How often have I seen men, clients, colleagues, friends, break down under the weight of expectations to be silently stoic, strong, self-reliant? They come to therapy not because they're broken, but because they've been forced to adapt to a broken system. And so the first question we need to ask is, what version of normal have I internalized? Trauma fundamentally is not what happened to you. Okay, so this is the section that I really want to get across. One of the most profound insights in the myth of normal is Mate's definition of trauma. He writes, trauma is not what happens to you. It's what happens inside you as a result of what happens to you. This is crucial because it shifts the conversation from external events to internal processes. Trauma is not just about catastrophic events like abuse or violence. It's also about chronic, subtle disconnection. The child who doesn't feel seen. The man who can't express sadness without being shamed. The woman who learns her worth is conditional on pleasing others. In short, trauma is what happens when our authentic selves are exiled in order to survive. Now you might ask, well, why does this matter? Because so many men I've worked with carry trauma without knowing it. They say things like, I didn't have a bad childhood, nothing dramatic happened to me. And yet so many are cut off from their feelings, are afraid of intimacy, are addicted to work or substances, or are racked with anxiety or have fallen to the black dog, depression. Trauma, as Mate explains, lives in the body. Bessel van der Kolk puts it really well when he says the body keeps the score. It sits in our body as tension, inflammation, rigidity. Healing, then, is about coming back to ourselves. This is where mindfulness, self-compassion, and therapy come in. And where movements like Making Good Men Great is so vital. Because healing from trauma isn't just about looking back. It's in fact about creating new ways of being, new ways of relating that honour who we really are. So, what is it that healing needs to take place? The idea is fundamental. Healing requires a culture shift. This is what I've talked about in Making Good Men Great. In order for men to recover from the ravages of patriarchy, we need in ourselves to deconstruct the internalized, introjected expectations of patriarchy and create a new way of being. You know, if I want to get academic about it, it's about a new ontology. Ontology is about being. It walks us through, the ideas that are related to being. Now, I see that proposition, not just one that resonates and aligns and attunes with my own thoughts, but in of itself, it's probably the most radical and hopeful part of the myth of normal, which is Mate's assertion that healing isn't just an individual journey, it's a collective journey. He writes, the question is not just how to heal ourselves, but how to create a culture that doesn't make people sick in the first place. This resonates so deeply with my own vision for social change, because we can't talk about healing men without talking about healing the culture of patriarchy. Now, healing the culture of patriarchy actually requires a deconstruction. We can't really talk about emotional health without questioning a system that rewards aggression, suppresses vulnerability, and punishes connection. Mate challenges us to reimagine our values, which is exactly what I talk about in Making Good Men Great. We need to shift our values from dominance to cooperation, from exploitation to care, from isolation to community. In Making Good Men Great, I talk about dismantling the 5 pillars of patriarchy: territory, hierarchy, acquisition, competition, and combativeness. And to take the next step, replace them with relational values: empathy, equity, collaboration, and care. When we do this work, not only do we heal ourselves, but we create ripples, like those in a pond, that heal our families, our communities, and in fact our societies. And that, to me, is the most inspiring takeaway from Mate's book. We need to remember that we are not powerless. Each choice to live more authentically, to connect more deeply, and to question deeply what we've been taught, to really critically think about it, contributes to a larger movement towards healing. And we need it in this space right now. We have people in power who are not just immoral, they're criminal. And they try to hide it under the guise of being victims. Trump, Netanyahu, they have mobilized the society to drink the Kool-Aid, to see themselves, in fact, as victims, and therefore they have the autocratic solution to homogenize their societies. It doesn't matter whether you're brown, black. If you're not white in the United States, you are seen with suspicion. ICE is ravaging communities. In the Middle East, they see the Palestinians as something lesser. And I appreciate those Israelis who are fighting against this. But like all autocrats, Netanyahu has a stranglehold on the system at the moment. And that needs to be dismantled. But this is not the only place. I could talk about Putin in Russia, Orban in Hungary, Orban's been very clever in his way of operating. He took a very democratic society that had, shed themselves from the shackles of communism, and he's just created another autocracy, another corrupt dictatorship. Now, hopefully, there are signs that his stranglehold is starting to lose its grip. And hopefully, like in many places, people will rise up again. But the constraints on creating healthier societies are not diminishing. They're in fact growing, and we've got to stay on top of it. Creating solutions to deal with immoralities like anti-Semitism doesn't mean applying immoral solutions to that, like robbing people of the freedom of speech, robbing academic freedoms. We need to keep in mind that we're working towards societies that are more inclusive, they're more distributive, they're more cooperative. And that requires courage on all sorts of different levels. And that is part of the idea of creating healthy societies where economic inequities do not dictate people's attempts to survive, but rather creating economic opportunity allows people to begin to thrive. So let's reflect a little bit on this. What are we talking about? So as I come to the end of today's episode, I want to leave you with a few reflective questions. What aspects of normal in your life might actually be unhealthy? Journal this. The next question is, where do you still feel disconnected from your body, your emotions, and your community? What would it look like for you to live in alignment with your authentic self? So take a moment this week to sit with these questions, journal about them, talk about them with someone you trust. And if you haven't already, I highly recommend you to pick up a copy of The Myth of Normal. Let it challenge you, and by all means, let it inspire you. Most importantly, in some ways, you need to remember that healing is not a destination. It is a practice. And as Mate reminds us, none of us can do it alone. Together, let's keep dismantling what's toxic and begin to build what's life-giving. So, thank you for joining me on Inspired Change with Gunter. I hope that you found today's episode meaningful. Please rate and subscribe on your favourite platform and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. So this is me, Gunter, signing off for another episode. Until next time, keep inspiring.
Love to hear from you. And if you're interested, please check out my work on www.gunterswoboda.com or www.goodmengreat.com.
Thank you for listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. For more information on the Making Good Men Great movement, or for individual or group coaching sessions with Gunter, visit goodmengreat.com.